death of theaters was a very, well, studios and the whole hardship all goes back to FDR and, prohibiting studios from having their own theater chains where they could be, via verticality, they could actually be supplying their networks of screens. But what I've learned over the years is that the most competitive place in any space is always those people who are trying to strike it big with mediocrity. If you're trying to strike it big with mediocrity, that is a very crowded space.
We're about to make America great again. Can we make film great again?
Right. And Trump announced he has ambassadors to Hollywood, so everything's gonna be great.
That's right.
He's got
Mel Gibson's gonna
Sly and Voight and Mel, and those guys have never done anything wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
Actually, I got a text from a producer in Hollywood about that announcement. It said, "Hey, we're going from DEI to DUI hires." And I was like, okay, all right.
Getting back to the original Hollywood.
Let's getting back to the golden age. Substance abuse. The reason why I think I've talked about this a fair bit, and some of it has been kind of wandering around, creating different hypotheses and trying to figure it out. So it's not like I have a crystal clear, firm, this is the answer. But I really do believe that at the time, if you made a really compelling film, and I've been in a lot of recent conversations about whether capitalism, like true free market, will just get you great art, or will it get you, art that compels the masses? So you can get to really, really successful pop art, but can you get to high art? Could you really ever get to cathedrals and, the kind of music?
What is a cathedral in the film space?
Right. Yeah. What would that even be? Yeah. Exactly. So the film space is by definition kind of a more pop, medium. But you used to make more money if your film was more compelling.
Right.
So while I don't think the free market fixes everything, in popular art, you made more money if you made your film more compelling. Now, this is kind of like democracy in general. If the people are broken, what they find compelling, what they're excited by, what they spend money on, it's not always a good thing. It could be 50 Shades of Grey selling 3 times as many copies as Harry Potter. It could be that kind of thing. It could be Euphoria. It could be like these Vice shows and films that really grab people. They get kind of like sucked in, and it's compelling. It's visceral. They're drawn in. It's well done on a craft level, but it's not well done on a moral level. And you can still make a bunch of money there. However, just in terms of craft, if you made really, really good movies, you are exponentially more likely to make more money. So other things could happen. You could make Shawshank, which is a great movie, and it could bomb. You could take it out into theaters and it, tail spins and it doesn't work. Kind of like a weird title. The marketing positioning wasn't great. And yet when people saw it, they found it really compelling. And so it's lived on and made tons and tons of money over time in other ways, but it didn't succeed immediately in theaters. The theatrical business right now is so spare that people really want to bet. The studios who are betting large sums of money are betting on things that won't get them fired for having bet on them. They're not betting on things that are most likely to make the most money, but they're like, how could I know? How could I know that the next Marvel iteration was going to flop? How could I know that we'd lose $250 million doing this? How could I know on Disney's side that this live action Snow White would flop? Now, if you are the executive who greenlit it, that made perfect sense to greenlight that. So where did it go wrong? But your job for having greenlit a live action Snow White is not on the line. And so you have all these individuals who are making individualistic decisions to self-protect. So how could we know this would be terrible? Whereas before, when they were trying to put originals out there, and this is older than COVID and older than the crash of theaters, putting an original piece of content, a new movie out into the world was always risky. And so Slumdog Millionaire, did extremely well, made a ton of money, and it was getting canned. Like, it was shot, it was not going to be released. Like, the studios were like, okay, nobody famous. It's this weird music driven,
set in India.
A-linear, like, it's
right.
It just can't succeed. This can't work. And it didn't matter that they had a director on it who already had his bona fides, and they, in greenlighting it, weren't going to get in trouble because they greenlit a genius, a verified genius of the industry. And then he made it, and then they all looked at it and thought, ooh, but this didn't work. This isn't going to work. And then when eventually via studio acquisition was actually released, I think is how it worked. Over like 300 million in the box, best picture, just, it really compelled people. It really reached the audience. And it's very, very difficult for businessmen to quantify quality. They have all their measurables when they're deciding where to invest. But the thing they can't just quantify and plug in is, how great will it be? Will this be good? Because you have to hire artists who are famously erratic. You have to hire artists to come do it. And in that process, somewhere along the way, things get squirrely. And the things you can't quantify when you greenlight, just come out and bite you. So back then, there were a lot of great directors. Even 2019, some fantastic movies came out in a really rich year. And then COVID, and everybody thought theaters are having a resurgence in 2019. And then and then all that happens. But you had 1917, Ford versus Ferrari, Knives Out. What's the other one? There's a couple.
On TV, you had
Jojo Rabbit was 2019 also. So 2019, like, that was wow, like, that was a good theatrical year. And then we're back here.
Right.
So all those executives who are hoping to save their butts, and all those investors who don't want to lose money, have overwhelmingly shifted the main thread of the industry to subscription model, to the subscription model. And what that does is it protects you, because you are saying, I'm spending this much in my pie chart on content, and I have this much in subscribers, and this is my share price, and we're trying to drive share prices. That's what we're trying to do here. And so what I need is a steady stream of content. I do not need quality content. So what I've told people is, it's like arguing with the guy managing the Delta Sky Club about how nice the cheese cube should be. Like, how should we really get the best cheese cubes in the world? Will that actually change how many people get their memberships and come in and pay to walk through the door if the cheddar cubes are better? And they relegated the art to that. This is a subscription membership club. You can walk in, and we've got cheese cubes. We've got so many cheese cubes from all around the world, dubbed into 19 languages. And, as long as you don't cancel, as long as you find some reason to stay among all of the cheese cubes, then the model works.
Right.
But the downside is it disincentivizes quality. Every time you spend to do that extra thing, to take that extra step, to hire that more talented cinematographer, and so on, unless it's a marketing thing that could drive subscribers, they won't do it, or that'll eat into the profitability of the producers. The producers will do it, and they'll take a bite out of their fixed profit that cannot possibly go up.
So you would think that someone would come along independently and create something that was just so good that it blows up, and like, people get off the slop and they get on to whatever that content is. Like, that's just what you would expect. Like, the incumbents get so fat and slow, and then someone new comes along.
It's time for convection. Everything congeals. Everything really, really congeals, the whole industry. And then there's always that convection that comes along.
So is that going to happen, or is it structure?
Happening. Okay. I think it is absolutely happening. And the death of theaters is kind of a weird thing to say, but the death of theaters was studios and the whole hardship all goes back to FDR and, prohibiting studios from having their own theater chains where they could be, via verticality, they could actually be supplying their networks of screens, and people could be going to chains of theaters owned by studios.
Well, I don't know about this.
I've never heard about this.
So yeah, it's a trust busting
Okay.
Big thing, and they got broken up.
As you're saying, I'm like, well, yeah,
The two industries,
that they should.
the two industries got separated out, and that is actually being mended. Netflix is buying theaters. People are starting to actually reacquire the theaters as standalones are struggling. They were popcorn vendors, and that just didn't pencil the scale they had to be. And so there's a lot of convection there too, and that could actually change for the first time since the 30s. But when that happened, it was this long tail, this long demise of that verticality was just banned, and you're competing with your rivals in those distribution centers. So and that can work. It's a gas station selling two kinds of candy bar.
Sure.
But it kind of bit them. Right. It bit them hard.
Like what that would look like, a change would look like would be I go to AMC to watch the best movies because AMC has the best movies, and maybe Regal doesn't. Because Regal they just get the slop.
Yeah.
And so
if you actually
Regal goes down, ideally AMC goes up.
So Regal's owned by Lionsgate and ends up being mostly a horror chain.
Sure.
You end up having lots of different differentiation would occur and things would happen. You also have a different kind of incentivization structure at the studio side when they're deciding what to fill their screens with among their own catalog.
Right.
It's not to say they would only send good stuff out. They'd still want to send the safest stuff out. But if you have megaplexes, you've got many screens, you're more likely to have more films reach the market and be tested. So what we have now is like with Hello Ninja, when we were doing Hello Ninja with Netflix, we negotiate the budget. Here's the budget. This is the production. Here's our profit. Like your profit is negotiated in advance. And
because that's how you can predict it. You predict it so accurately.
This is the pie chart of production expense.
Right.
Your profitability on your cartoon is fixed. So if you decide to grind a little extra, to go a little farther, to send scripts back to draft and do it one more time, it's all costs. There is no upside. You can't possibly profit any more by making it any better. Your profit's already been capped.
So who's catching because there has to be more potential upside in merch or whatever it is, or views. Like who's capturing the unlimited upside if your profit is fixed?
One of the weirdest thing I've seen, and this is I think the nature of just massive corporations and people having social pressure in cocktail parties as opposed to for them individually as opposed to the interests of their company, is when we were selling Hello Ninja, Amazon was bidding. So Amazon wanted this, Netflix wanted this. Amazon said, but we will not deign to besmirch ourselves with commercialism. We do not want to sell toys or any tie-ins. We're going to freeze all consumer products. Because
none of their stuff. Yeah,
we're going to freeze that.
Sure.
And I told them at this breakfast, I was like, you do know you're the world's largest retailer, right? Like, it's like, no. I mean, it's really important that like they were ashamed of the corporate mothership and the opportunities it presented. The last thing they wanted for their careers was to be people who were making shows to sell backpacks on Amazon. And they didn't want to have that tie-in. Now with Amazon's X-ray technology, they actually were totally set up so that they could have just been like tap to add to cart products on screen. Every single thing you're watching could just be add to cart. Like they could sell so much with so much less friction than any retailer's ever had before. It was really bizarre, but they were scrupulous in LA about not being tainted by Seattle and not wanting to be people who made commercials. So that was really weird. And Netflix was saying, hey, we want to do this. We want to do consumer products. So here's the advance we're going to give you on consumer products is what we're going to do. And so it was pretty easy to be like, let's go make toys too. Then their mandate changed internally at Netflix after we signed up with them. And they actually were kind of like, we don't really want to, and I could understand this in their model. They don't want to really build brands that Netflix, the mothership, is beholden to. So the idea of having a brand, some piece of IP that some external creator made that they then spent a ton of money marketing and placing, growing to the point where now they're going to be under leveraged the next season. There's this negativity there for them to even build freestanding brands. And they played around with it with Stranger Things and other stuff and just didn't find the benefit to their model. So they will walk away from tens of millions of dollars of consumer products on a successful show and focus on the real business, which is their share price. And that's what matters. How much they retain in subscribers, what's their churn, what's their growth, what's their share price, and like backpacks, whatever. So they actually just gave me the rights back. I was like, thanks.
For Hello Ninja?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Which was great. But then we went right into COVID and we were setting a bunch of stuff up. I'm like, we've been busy. We haven't ever gotten back around to like trying to exploit the consumer products on Hello Ninja. The plans that were in place were phenomenal, though. I was pretty pumped. So I was pretty thrilled by it. But then, the seas of international politics.
For like whatever Forrest put into those like kids love Hello Ninja. Like,
it's
the plush toy potential is
the plushies, just the ninja head by itself as a plushie. We had Hello Ninja sushi that was going to be hitting stores that was actually peanut butter and jelly sandwiches just made in a roll and sliced with like little plastic chopsticks. So you have these kids with sliced PBJ sushi in their Hello Ninja packs. It was like they had all these things that were getting ready to go. Then we're like, never mind, let's do it next time. But learning where the incentives are is probably been one of the most important things about even doing that show for me. It was great. I really loved it. It was a lot of fun. I love how far it's reached. I love getting tagged in all the birthday parties around the world. Just birthday parties in Indonesia and Brazil where they're doing Hello Ninja birthday parties is pretty awesome. And we don't have they're all buying pirated stuff. We don't have, but it still excites me. But learning how the machines work, how the Death Stars work as streamers has been amazing. But what Angel's doing, what we're trying to do with Canon Plus, what happened with The Chosen, there's all this opportunity that's kind of outside of the traditional system, and it's growing significantly. And people have learned that if you make a show that is compelling, it is compelling to people. But I'm not seeing The Chosen, so I can't comment on quality, but I know Dallas was committed to doing the best he could with little budgets. It really hit people. Like whatever anybody might think of it, it really absolutely hit people, and they're on towards 1 billion views, and the profitability of it has been absurd. And they came out with like no studio, no like nobody to work with except for the guys who were trying to filter Disney movies and got sued, and then built Angel Studios post Mid Angel. And what those guys built is pretty insane. And they are deeply committed to creator incentives and incentivizing excellence and incentivizing how it compels the viewer. So what they're doing on their streamer and what we do on Canon is that we do have royalties off of a slice of the pie, slice of subscriber revenue. It's just prorated to creators by minute viewed that month. So in terms of you come in, and if you are watched, 10% of the minutes go to your show, you're going to get 10% of that.
Interesting.
Of that pie.
Sure. Yeah, the creators have minute by minute royalties on the content. Yeah. Wow.
And so I have, if I were at Angel, which is astronomically smaller than Netflix, if I had done on Angel what I did on Netflix with Hello Ninja, I would have made a lot more money. And it's, more than 100th small, like just 100th of the Netflix platform. But their model is, they're really, really intentional about trying to build it in a way that will incentivize creators. And we've been doing the same thing. And then we've also been internally at Canon trying to find partnerships and shows we can do together so that when I have somebody internally that we've contracted to make a doc, they actually are incentivized to do the best job they could possibly do. Because if it's really good, it won't just live in Canon. It will also go out and be licensed elsewhere, and they'll have a taste. Like they'll actually,
equity and all this.
Yes, they want it to be compelling. So we have a doc right now called Lunatic Farmer about Joel Salatin that just dropped on Angel. That's a Canon Plus doc. It's going to be on Canon in 30 days. and it really was just very good. It was an excellent doc. And so when we looked at it, it was like, okay, let's see how it can live, out here, how much revenue could it generate as just product by itself and not as a cheese cube inside of our own Delta Sky Club.
Right.
How do we incentivize creators to really use this as a place to incubate and cut their teeth and develop their skills, but then we can platform out, we can scale beyond that. And there's revenue to be had if you pursue excellence. And I think that's just the way God made the world.
Right.
So,
Sure.
Natural incentives.
Well, you've touched on two things I think that we're seeing broadly. One is when you talk about Hollywood, is described the risk averse. There's like this managerial approach to building, and we've seen it in government and tech and corporate. Like everybody is this ossified bureaucratic machine, human machines that make things, run things, build them, and then the reaction to that has been going direct, like just going direct, agency.
Yep.
You're smaller, don't worry. You tweet one thing, it can go to the moon. Don't worry. Work with a smaller distribution. It's okay. You can make more money. Talk about those things from a storytelling perspective. Like what's going on? You have the bureaucrats and then the reaction.
So the ultimate tension there is that when you do that, when you do go with the little route, the freestanding route, the super independent route, your risk goes way up.
Sure.
And your risk goes way up. And so you end up making decisions kind of like the barnacled studio executive. Do we really, really want to spend this much money? Do I want to go take money off of investors? Can I, in good conscience, take money off of investors to go push this 4-wall theatrical project? I'm going to take this to 500 screens. I really believe that it's going to be compelling. And that means you have to get the word out. That means you're in newspapers. That means you're doing, geo-tracking, targeted ads around all your screens. You're doing all this stuff. You're spending all that money because you really, really believe in it. Now, if there's an earthquake, you're done. If there's anything in the news, if there's another assassination attempt, if there's all these things you can't control, just nuke everything. Like that conversation goes away. And, I've been on the road touring with books. I've done all the little book tour things. And in each town, they have this literary babysitter who will take the author, because authors are not trustworthy. They're not reliable people, and they can't be, you can't send them to Denver and believe they'll show up to 9 different events on time. It's not going to happen. So there's that babysitter who grabs you by the ear and tracks you around. And so those people, I've always asked a ton of questions, like, who were the funniest stories? Who'd you take around? Like, I know there's great ones. I've heard some phenomenal stories about some big names from some of the older people who've been doing this since the 60s or whatever, when I went through. But they also told stories, like the horror stories of what it's like to be on the road in a vicious news cycle. When you're at the beginning of a 2-month tour trying to sell books on September 10th, 2001.
Sure.
And you end up just stranded in Albuquerque, and you put 2 years into this book. Like, you just spent 2 years of your life.
And Al Qaeda was working there. Same thing at the same time.
It's like,
no chance.
Whoops. So the same, that's true of any kind of entertainment biz. Anytime when you're rolling out your product, you're just totally at the mercy of the news cycle and what actually happens. So the risk of going independent is very, very, very high.
Sure.
And so people try to de-risk it by reducing their budgets and reducing their quality. Like, they get these cheaper things that they try to make resonate. And sometimes they do. But what I've learned over the years is that the most competitive place in any space is always those people who are trying to strike it big with mediocrity. If you're trying to strike it big with mediocrity, that is a very crowded space.
Sure.
That is it. Walk through a Barnes & Noble, just scroll on Amazon and look at the books and how many people are hoping. They're throwing this Hail Mary and they're just hoping that they'll hit it with mediocrity. And the thing that keeps them coming back is that some people do. There are times when something that's pretty mediocre sells 1 million units and somebody's happy and they became a big deal. And that's what most people want to do. The space that actually gets pretty thin is when you actually are deeply committed to excellence. So if you're deeply committed to pursuing excellence, you run into other people who also are, and they frequently are to their own hurt. But over the long run, it pans out. And they're not usually as competitive. They actually like lean on each other and relate to each other. And it's kind of a brotherhood there that they know will be able to help each other out at some point because the alignment's similar. And there's so much to conquer. There's so much to do and achieve. There's actually not very many people who are willing to suffer to that level to try to make their stuff better and better and better and better. That's where you get those auteur directors.
Mm-hmm.
They had to be a little bit broken.
Sure.
They had to be working against their own incentive early on. They had to be just deeply committed to the dopamine they got when it was right. And they got it where they wanted it to be. And then eventually money followed later. So in the interim, everybody's like, I could do Sharknado. And then it's makes money.
Yeah.
And everybody else is like, what other stupid idea is there that I could do?
Right.
It's the Bitcoin of film.
Yeah.
Right.
And so people flood that. They flood this mediocre market with competition. And in the film business, especially, excellence takes money. And so it's pretty difficult. And on the left side of the spectrum, there are people who understand that and are willing to invest in 2 to 3 films for a particular director that they believe in, expecting a hit to come. And so they know the first one, the second one, Wes Anderson was this way. The first one, the second one aren't going to hit. But by the third one, we'll really be making money. And conservatives aren't that way. Conservatives tend to be extremely practical, really ROI right now. And that long build of, excellence, trying to really do something great that's going to span a catalog of films, as opposed to, one little spec house that you're going to build and try to flip, right away. That's just something conservatives have struggled to ever get into.
Yeah. What did we dodge? What do you think?
A lot.
I think people talk about the fork in the road, and I really do think this time was like a...
Oh, it was a big fork in the road. I think that what did we dodge into is also interesting.
Sure.
I think one of the things that's the catharsis everybody's feeling is actually a lot of it is connected to just knowing who's in charge.
Sure.
That we had for a long time, we just haven't had a president, but things are happening.
Right.
And nobody has any accountability for it. You can't pin down who's doing it. Everybody knows this like sock puppet isn't doing it.
Right.
So who's actually in charge? And Trump is very clearly like in charge and having a party. And JD Vance is just fun to watch every time he talks.
Sure.
And just a walking t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that there's all this, joy that also is connected to just knowing somebody's holding the steering wheel.
Sure.
Just there's things happening. And also the people are numb to the crying of the left. So that's extremely gratifying.
Right. Right.
That's not working. The I don't really care Margaret stuff is
great.
Where everybody is like, we really don't care. Can we just stop sucking?
Do you think that still rocky times ahead on the whole, or you think it's are we starting to step into golden era America?
It'll be rocky.
Yeah.
I think both.
Yeah. So
it'll be rocky. I would love for him to go the tariff direction. If he does, it'll be rocky. It'll be rocky at first. It's not like just a light switch you can flip.
Mm-hmm.
So if we went to the external revenue service, I'd be thrilled out of my mind to see that.
Yeah. This like all the stuff he's passing is like pure fantasy. Like your dad always talks about, if I was president for a day, a beautiful 3 days.
Yeah.
It's like, but like the stuff he's passing is like the stuff that your dad would pass in his 3 days of rule. Just like executive orders.
So the thing that's very Sun Tzu about it too is it's so unrelenting that they really struggle to like muster their troops and fight any one thing because he's on to the next thing. Right. So it's like, wait, Gulf of America is stupid. That's dumb. And it's like, he's moved on.
No, they're on the floor, just shaking, screaming, and crying, as they would say themselves.
Yeah. And then that's our response. It's like, finally. But the thing I love the most is that the cool shame of the left against the right has just stopped working. that they no longer have the cool kid lever that can steer conservatives one way or the other. They still have it in LA, they still have it in a few places, but not anywhere near as much. There are pockets in LA that still want to make money, that are still servants of mammon, and not just the weird virtues they were pushing. And those people are actually kind of already pre this shifting towards twisters and trying to greenlight movies that America might actually want to watch and make some money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to amplify a lot, but there will also be, some nice potholes in the road. I really look forward to getting Greenland.
Yes.
And if we struggle to get Congress to eliminate the Department of Education, he could always just relocate it to the northern tip of Greenland, and remote work is not allowed.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know why we struggle to hire people for this.
Yes. That's right.
There's things you could do.
It does seem like a lot of the energy, you can even go back to the stuff that you were talking about in terms of film, like de-risking versus taking risk. A lot of the energy, at least now, all of the I think the enthusiasm behind the win is that there's a return of like authority and sovereignty. Like at least we know who's saying it. And then also this coalition of, they have different incentives and different backgrounds than all Christians, but like you look at the group of guys that are up there and it's just men. It's like Elon, Trump, Vance, versus compare like Waltz, like if a limp fish handshake were a guy, like what's his name? Waltz is that person, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think? How could they have run that guy? Like, what do you think? How are they reading the story where they think this dude will win this, and like this team will win the game?
I think people tend to believe in themselves a little bit, and even when they ought not to. And when you've gotten away with what they had gotten away with up to that point,
sure,
and you really truly believe in the progressive gospel, you really do believe in the unrelenting, ever marching authoritarian progress of liberalism, you can be very startled. You can have sat in your own little echo chamber and manipulated all the polls so much for so long and only been at cocktail parties with people who agree with you, and never been around anybody who didn't, and that was kind of it. And you start to see people, comedians and others, the sign of the pendulum was swinging is when stand-up comedians would start taking shots at liberals, and the places would just die.
Sure.
It's like, because it's always been mock the right.
Yeah.
And the libs would all laugh at and shame the right. And when it started swinging the other direction, it was like, oh, this is interesting. I even saw a guy pre-election, I think it was, talking about how, like, don't get too partisan. You need everybody. He's doing this big tent thing. You need conservatives, you need liberals. He's like, I mean, I have taxes that have to get done, and I want my accountant to have been there at J6. He's like, that guy better have stormed the Capitol. Like, when I hire somebody to do my taxes, he better have a buffalo hat on. He's ready. He's just as fire-breathing red as you could be. He's like, but I don't want him to make my coffee. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to go down and let the gay guy make my coffee. But and everybody's dying. It's like, it's that kind of thing. There's been just really a deluge of this, of like, why don't liberals have boats? Why is it if you see somebody with a boat, they're taking their family out on a boat, having way more fun than you've ever had, why is it that they're almost always a conservative? Like, there's been these things popping up and people enjoying it. There's been all the Gen Z and millennial weird feminist chicks talking about dating, conservative guys, like just getting sick of the liberal thing. There was just this swing going. And everyone was so sick of just getting steered and controlled and patronized and lectured. And the libs turned from the party they thought they were, which is, we're so awesome. Like, we're down with drugs and free sex. And, it's like, these girls are easy. this is the party. This is this is Vanity Fair. All the invitations of all the vice, and they turned into the most scoldy, like absolutely, high necked, over dramatic, obnoxious, like scoldy people possible, and lost everyone. And I actually think that one of the big dangers right now for conservatives is that they try to swing into like an ethos of like 1980s Playboy, where it's like, we want to get back to this kind of innocent raunch. We want to get back to this raunch before we were grooming people and mutilating people. And could we just get back to, sexy conservative chicks and calendars? Can we get pinup calendars? And can we do all this? All that is an impulse to get back nostalgically to the same kind of sexual temptation and sin that they started with, but before all the guilt and before it went really, really wrong.
Sure.
And I think that's going to be there for a lot of people.
Yeah, Vice, but it's right wing.
Yeah,
totally.
Toxic masculinity. And we do such a bad job of embracing whatever insult is thrown at us and trying to make it true. So when they call us, they label us patriarchs and toxic masculinity, it doesn't take long before people are like, I want to be as toxic as I can possibly be. Because what's gonna piss them off the most, that's what I'm gonna do. And that's not exactly the best way to govern your behavior. And you get to see that. You'll see that in film. We'll see that in media. We'll see that all over the place. So the Howard Stern will be more on the right, cropping up, just being filthy and nasty and awful, and everybody looking for the next layer, the next nerve ending they could shock and destroy of their feminist aunt.
Right.
And while I can understand that could be kind of gratifying, thus there's the temptation.
Tears.
It's not a long-term path.
No.
In that same vein, though, I mean, so with the previous liberal government, it was like, it almost felt blatant where they're like, we can elect a Fetterman, we can elect Biden, like with no, we can do is like arrogant, like we can do whatever we want to do. It's on purpose. We're picking bad people to run. And now you have a flip to obviously the current cast, but from a pullback historical view, are we coming back into a time of sort of like a more great men, great individuals era after like a very kind of tough,
a long drought?
A long drought. Yes, exactly.
I hope so. Okay. I mean, I really do hope so. And the thing is, what you just said there is right on the money. The arrogance that destroyed the left, like just the incredible arrogance. Like, we know what comes after pride. We know what happens with arrogant characters. When you're reading the story from a cosmic perspective, overweening pride and hubris just doesn't work out in the long run. It can work out for a little bit, but it doesn't work out over the long haul. And that's the risk, really the risk to all those great men. So how much hubris will Elon have? How much hubris will Trump have? Will he think that he did this?
The Nebuchadnezzar sort of arc.
Yeah. Will he try to put himself on Mount Rushmore? Is he going to do something like that? And if he starts to do that, then his downfall is imminent. It's right around the corner. And that's what they were doing. And their downfall has been more thorough and more exhaustive than I think any of us would have predicted 18 months ago, 24 months ago. We might have thought Trump would win, but this is amazing. This is we're rooting out everything. This is all the DEI stuff getting just torn out of buildings and shredded. This is wild. I mean, this is a very, very wild moment. I'm thrilled by it. And so I do think we're going to course correct, and we'll see some great leadership. And I think there's an opportunity, principle of war of pursuit, get in there and build right now. It's just build, and realize that unless the hearts of all the people change, the pendulum's going to come back. It's like we pushed it way over there. So it's time to fortify. It's time to take ground and fortify positions, because it will try to correct, and we need it to not correct all the way back. So and hopefully there is revival, and hopefully there are a lot of people that wake up, and you see that too. You see everybody's openness to Christianity and the conversation of the gospel and Christ, and people who don't even grasp it are still like, I'm for it. I have
He
no
was
idea.
literally like, I'm a cultural Christian.
Yeah.
I don't think the West can survive without Christianity. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't think it's real. Like,
Yeah.
stories happened. He's like, I'm not convinced. Or he said something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it was Dawkins.
Dawkins did that. That's when we did the thing with Christopher Hitchens way back in the day. He said that drunk in the back of a limo.
Right.
He was like, if I could destroy Christianity, I wouldn't. We showed that to Dawkins in 2008, and he was horrified. Because Hitchens was telling the story of telling that to Dawkins. So he was saying, I told Dawkins I wouldn't eliminate Christianity even if I could. I would not. If I had the opportunity, I wouldn't do it. And he just talked about just the horror that Dawkins had at that position. That's where Dawkins is now. Like, Dawkins has now reached that spot where he's like, by the way, this is awful. This might be fake. This might be some kind of delusion, but I'm for it. If this is the delusion, it's a more attractive and more appealing and more functional delusion than anything else. And so it's just one step closer.
Where would Hitchens be if he was still alive today, you think, in this environment?
There's every now and then.
He and Tom Wolfe are like two that you and I talk about a lot. We're like, I wish I could get these two guys.
I was going to say Tom Wolfe. Yeah. But I had, like, back in the day, I remember I bought a truck that I was really excited about. And I kept wanting to call my grandfather. I was like, oh man, he loved cars way more than I did. He'd be all about this. And I was like, oh yeah, he's like, I can't call him. He's gone. It's like he died years prior. But I had this reflex of like, I wanted to, to get his reaction to this truck. I have that with Hitch and Tom Wolfe all the time. Sure. I'm grateful to have known both of them. And I feel like it's such a bizarre gift to receive this time as a creative, as an observer, as somebody who's just watching this narrative moment in history. And those are the two dudes I go back to just thinking, man, it'd be really interesting to hear Tom Wolfe process this. Because he was so attuned to the farcical, like, progressive trap so early. When you read Radical Chic, and he's talking about all the Upper West, Upper East Siders firing all their black employees because it looked bad. It looked bad for them to have black people working for them. So just fired them all. And it was Bernstein, I think, and some others who actually had organized what they called the Spick and Span Employment Agency to replace them all with South Americans. And they just called it the Spick and Span.
Incredible.
And so they were like, it looks so tacky.
Right.
It looks so tacky for us to have employed an African American, and we have to import South Americans who are kind of white, but still down the food chain that they'll come clean my toilets.
And we'll call it Spick and Span.
Yeah. And then we're going to be racist about it. So he'd been along for the ride of liberal hypocrisy for forever.
Yeah. Painted Word is like this look into the bullshit world of that. Yeah, it's like, it's all fake and gay, as they say. And the people there don't realize it. But you can read it from the outside. It's like reading a long comedy special. Yeah. So you can kind of see it.
When they made Man in Full, they just made Man in Full, I was all excited as a show. It's one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen. It just wanders so far away from every single thing he was noticing and going after. But he was not, with meeting him, he was not what I thought. So you read his, he was so funny and he was so giggly all the time. He was just constantly cracked up. And you read his books and it's like, there's this weight to what he's doing. It's this very heavy, critique, and it's very interesting and intricate. He was just snotty and laughing his head off all the time. And so the first time I met him, he came in to this Italian restaurant wearing a blue velvet cape and a blue velvet fedora over his white suit, and then proceeded to laugh himself sick about the Tiger Woods affair story. And just sitting there, just the beauty of this golfer and all the racially charged aspects of the narrative and the picture of Tiger Woods having these really kind of lower class cocktail waitresses around the entire PGA circuit while having this Swedish like model wife at home, and then ending having popped a pill and knocking himself out with Ambien. when she caught him. And so he fled barefoot, jumped in his Cadillac. And I remember this from him, just like him being so thrilled about it. And she chased him with a golf club, which is also perfect. Smashing the rear windshield while he tried to escape in a Cadillac, but fell asleep at the wheel and crashed the car. Then she's mad, but he was unconscious from having taken too many sleeping pills, barefoot and snoring loudly in the neighbor's grass on his back while the cops were all around. And he was just weeping. I mean, he was weeping about this, and just like snotty weeping at how hilarious it was. I mean, this was not the guy I expected to meet after having like read The Right Stuff in high school and been on through. It's like, this guy was clever and witty and cutting and insightful, but I didn't think of him as just like wheezy, amused. So I know right now he probably would die of laughter, actually. This would be, because if he were here, he would not be here anymore, because it's something else. I don't know that Hitch would know what to do. I really don't. I think he would struggle to find his alignment, you know, where he should go. And he was very much about the audience and playing to a crowd. And right now, as Christianity is swinging back, I think that he would probably be where Dawkins is, just more publicly and sooner. But it is a moment. I'm cherishing this moment.
Well, and he called all of the stuff in Great Britain really early on with the Islamophobia label, and I mean, that
some
was
of those videos coming out now.
Yeah,
of him
he's
talking early.
On,
You pop those videos up, you know, like 5-10 years ago. You're like, this guy's such a racist, Islamophobe, whatever.
Yeah.
And now you play those videos, you're like, this man's a
He was just telling the truth.
He was like right and early.
Man. He was telling the truth. He also, and he and his brother had so much like feuding over family issues. But Peter wrote The Abolition of Britain, which Christopher loved, and was, you know, just talked about the filial pride he felt at that work, because that is exactly what had happened. Like post World War II, just Britain was no more. They had made a decision about whom to be conquered by, and that they were already an occupied and conquered nation. And then he basically was looking at observing the backwash of that, with the remnants of the empire still being able just to send anyone they wanted back to the center and just sweep over it, just overrun it. And he would have been a firebrand for the last couple of years, for sure. But anyway, I mean, I honestly think I cannot think of a more comical, strange way that we would hit the reset other than Donald Trump. That dude, with his persona, with his complexion, with his hair and his manner of speech, that this guy would be the guy who actually just stood against the forces of rot and progressivism and swung it the other way.
The guy from Home Alone.
Yeah, that guy. The guy who was eager to be in front of a camera like anytime.
I mean, it's the most American thing of all time.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I love that side by side of Obama talking about bin Laden being dead, Trump talking about the Iranian. It's like, he sounded like a dog, a beautiful dog. I'm like, what does that even mean? What is okay?
Great turn of
I love Melania dressing like a gangster. I love all of it. I'm like, this is fantastic. As much as it sucked in 2020 to sit there and watch what happened, I think that even that was an incredible blessing, because I've always said, when Trump was elected the first time, if the liberals had just flattered him, if they just kissed up to him, I think he would have been Bill Clinton.
Because he was a liberal.
He'd hop back and forth, pro-choice, pro-life, whatever. Like, this is not a dude of principles, but they radicalized him. Like, they really, really radicalized him with how they treated him when he'd been in with everybody. He'd been on the inside and all those doors closed and they all were denouncing him. You know, Oprah had told him that she wanted him to run for president.
Yeah, there's the video of Rachel Maddow. And all those people are like, oh, it's true. Yeah.
And then suddenly he's condemned, and that was just the worst mistake they could have made. They could have put all the little hooks in and steered him, and instead they turned him into what he is. Then they stole this election from him in 2020. So he had 4 years to think about, what will I do and how will I do it differently? And he was keyed up and ready.
Yes.
So he's come off the starting line pretty wildly.
What do you think about Barron Trump? What arc is he in?
He's in a weird one.
Yeah.
He's in a weird one. It honestly is going to just depend on what personal choices he makes.
Sure.
You know, it's like it's for all these guys, especially kids from privilege. There's all the doors along the way. I mean, you see Don Jr. and everybody else. Like just will he be relevant? Will he matter? Everybody wants him to. Everybody thinks he will. It's like, well, that's kind of up to him. In the rest of his college career, it's up to him. You can't just bury pasts anymore the way people used to be able to with like the Kennedys, and just sort of bring them out sparkling as if they never left a girl drowning in a pond or whatever. They just,
for example, it's a random example.
Yeah. So if he does stuff like that, it's like it's just
Sure.
It's done for him. But I think there's obviously some wild potential for that guy. And
I feel like he and Musk are both in prologue of
Insane
their arcs.
starting.
oh yeah,
Absolutely unbelievable. Like just again, if they choose to pursue
both
them,
with crazy fathers.
Yeah.
Truly crazy.
and together, like at the same time,
and they, both there. And Elon could easily tell X, like, hey, so I'm going to locate your consciousness into a robot and send you to Mars. I'm like, he's psycho. he's really out there. And of course, I'm loving him. I really, really enjoying it. But it is a movie, and I think it's going to be everybody's favorite movie, favorite show for a long while.
Did you see that Herbert von Braun had he wrote some fiction about Mars, and the guy that rules Mars is named Elon.
In the book?
Yeah, in the book that Herbert von Braun wrote.
And that would be where Elon got his dream. Apparently, he's like, oh, there's my prophecy.
Yeah. He didn't know this. Elon just found this out yesterday.
You found out recently? Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So someone tweeted and he's like, wait, is this real? And they're like, oh, this is crazy.
Awesome. I guess I have to.
Yeah. He's like,
I guess that I have to.
Yeah, whatever.
What do you think? There's kind of the American sense that we've been taught is that like generations always fail in 3 generations.
Yeah.
Like rise, wealth, and then the third, like always going to go off corrupt.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot.
The shirt sleeves.
Exactly.
Thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Is that the case? I mean,
I think it is. I think it is the case because that's what we did. And I think it's a little longer in terms of a national arc, but we really did generationally wander.
Mm-hmm.
So the greatest generation won the big war. And then how many generations was it before like America was just
trans kids?
Was just lost.
Kids, yeah.
Right.
It didn't take that many. It's sort of we're sitting here kind of looking at the millennials and being like, this is where it crescendoed in some ways. And obviously everybody that's young and coming up right now, they're underneath that. The pushback that's really interesting to me is that we have a crazy boomer at the helm as opposed to the Walking Dead boomer at the helm. It's like, and you go back and of course Hillary boomer, and we are really running out. So the rise of the men, the rise of the great leaders that is the opportunity is going to come, I think, in the wake of the exit of the boomers. So when Trump's funeral is going, when everybody else who's been fighting the fight, good, bad, and compromised, they're all going into the grave on both sides. It's going to be a very, very interesting time. And that's part of what I mean by fortifying, like building and fortifying, because there's going to be a lot of new leadership. It's going to be leadership that has not had the experience of leadership. Obama being like the one like non-boomer to come through the seat of power and some time. And he kind of set everything in motion that we're finally just uprooting.
Right.
And so when Gen X and millennials are our only choices, like except for, the little young AOCs of, 10, 15 years from now, when that's it, it's going to be pretty wild because the decay and the education loss that's happened,
right,
and critical thinking and even just the operating system of emotion and everything else that's instilled, even in people who are conservative. They might be conservative, they might be liberal, but they're still following their hearts and what they feel. And what they feel could be affected. And so that's kind of the grim outlook of like, okay, so what do we do? And the answer is we have to build. And I think that comes back to the arts. It's business. But I think in terms of telling stories and being able to cast a positive, inspirational vision is absolutely essential. So right now we have a window of time, courtesy of Trump, to really try to build, and then hopefully Vance behind him. You know, like that. I think that's kind of the way it looks, early reports, but who knows? Hopefully we've got that window to really try to instill a lot of cultural reflexes in the younger generations. And the way those reflexes are instilled is via storytelling, and it's always via storytelling. That's the way all the woke, empathetic sob story stuff got instilled in the culture, was all via storytelling. If we want it to be different, then we actually have to feed the people really good stories, great art, things that inspire them to walk out their door and go be better characters in their own lives and go struggle and suffer for what they could achieve, what they could do for the right reasons and with the right reflexes. And that's something that if we don't really get on, and if we don't succeed in the arts at all, if conservatives fail in the arts for the next 10 to 12 years, then the reset will be vicious. So I really do. I mean, some of this is kind of like in a school, if you talk to each teacher, if you talk to the Latin teacher, he thinks Latin's the most important thing. Right. Music teacher thinks music's the most important thing. I'm in the arts, I'm in storytelling. Yeah. I think this is the most important thing. It's really important to build freestanding businesses and economic models. So parallel economy and so on, where we cannot be made vulnerable to debanking and other things that have been used against us in recent past. Mm-hmm. We just saw it. We need to be really, really resilient against that. We need to have banks that are ideologically friendly. So conservatives have a tendency, and investors have a tendency to think in terms of ROI as opposed to mission. And so sometimes they'll talk about double bottom line and they'll try to align those two things. But if they're just thinking ROI and they're not thinking cultural movement, move the cultural needle, right, then, you know, it'll be a little bad. We'll get that pendulum swing, mm-hmm, and it'll be rough on the other side. Yeah. So I really think it's like, I feel more urgency now. I feel this amazing relief and more urgency to build and push and go harder than I've gone in, you know, a couple of decades in this window.
Yeah. Because now the other thing is, like, so many people now are listening, you know, like, yeah, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even if we all went as hard as we could then, your audience was pretty ghettoized. Yep. Just by design, segmented, like people weren't open to listening to these stuff. Yeah, now people are curious, like they want to know what's out there.
I think families. Well, here's a weird sidebar. I'll plug my nephew-in-law, who's a Korean YouTuber, and he's big in Korea. He makes his living YouTubing, but he makes his living YouTubing in Santa Cruz, California, with my wife's family, where he married my niece, and that family is hilarious. They're all like happy. They're joyful. They love each other. They're California surfers. You know, they've got, it's this really stereotypical thing, but it's a big family. And, you know, that's weird in Korea. This big family that loves each other and is all around each other and supporting each other and all going and doing things together, including like visiting Korea for their wedding. And so these, you know, these videos he posts are just big, really, really enormous over there. And a big part of what's so compelling is a positive vision of what a family could be like. And it's very cartoony, you know, it's like
but in Korea, you have like the fertility rates going down, like no one getting married, all this stuff.
So. And so you have this positive vision. And that's, I mean, this, as small as that is, it's kind of amazingly large actually, but as small as that is in a broad cultural sense, one guy making these little YouTube videos that people really love in Korea because it's like looking into a different world and different possibilities. We kind of need to do that everywhere. So what is the positive vision to young men? What is the positive vision to young women? What is the positive vision of what you could build? What kind of family you could have? What kind of life you could lead? What kind of joy there is for you to have in the hard work of building something valuable? Like, what is there waiting for them? And there's a lot of disillusionment, understandably, in institutions and colleges, in authority structures. But okay, so we don't trust those guys anymore.
Right.
But what is there? Like, what is there for you to do, and for you to spend your life doing that will be worth it and be really wonderful? While we, in this brief moment, define our joy by undoing crap, just like scraping out a hoarder's house. We're just snow shoveling crap out the front door into a bonfire. We're just get it out. That's really satisfying. There's a catharsis to it.
It's always fun.
Right.
Yeah. And when we're done with that,
you still can't move in.
Then what?
Right.
Like, then what? What are you going to do positively, as opposed to just, we've undone all this crap. That's thrilling. I'm enjoying it. What now?
Yeah. I was talking to somebody yesterday about wondering, I don't have any insider knowledge here, but wondering like where Tucker's going to go this year. And we were discussing, like, it seems like, and I was like, my hope is that he just came from the season of very accurately painting, laser designating targets for airstrikes. And now that he did that well, he shouldn't. There's still targets to say, hey, there's still an enemy camp over there. So, but you should move towards highlighting, like, all right, now who's building, who's doing, what statutes are we put, statues or monuments or institutions.
That would be great.
Like, that's the shift that ideally happens.
And what I think you guys have seen, I'm sure, I know I've seen it, is that when people have been doing that, well, they've been on that mission of painting targets and identifying, they can have a really hard time coming back from the war.
Yes.
They're they're painting the next target. Like, what it turns out, it was actually this pharmaceutical family that did this in 1850 and before World War I and before the American Civil War and before, like, we've got all of this conspiracy thread, and we're gonna go to nuke this, and we got to understand that. It's like, could we just come back and just go from zero? Yeah. What do you want to build? What should we want to build right now?
Right.
And
now we actually have the opportunity.
I think that about all the institutions. I was just talking to somebody with New St. Andrews College, with Logos School here, with ACCS, with the denomination CREC, with Canon Press. If you guys are new founding, right, which I think is the perfect name, because if we are going to build Canon today from scratch, what would we want it to be for the next 40 years? We need to have no loyalty to what it was for the last 40 years, and just be thinking, like, okay, what is the ideal structure? There will be a ton of overlap, but we kind of need to, like, reaffirm each of the things and not be doing anything by sheer momentum. Just only, building strategically for what the next 40 years might need, and being prepared for that. So with education, K through 12, with college, with publishing, with media, with business, you guys are involved in venture. There's all these different things. What do we need from zero? And what we will have is some people who want to receive their laurels for having fought the good fight. Great. You guys, that's great. But it's kind of like an NFL team paying a quarterback for what he did in the past, not because he could do something good now.
Right.
It's not, we don't need retroactive awards.
Right.
We need to be thinking about what's the most strategic thing to do. What does a K through 12 classical Christian school look like now for this moment in time, and going forward for decades? And same thing with a college, a liberal arts school, same thing with everything. Is it exactly the same? Probably not.
Right.
Actually, is there a lot of overlap? Yeah, probably. But, kind of like reaffirming, like, principles at a principle level, like, what are we trying to accomplish? What have we accomplished? What are we trying to accomplish now? Because we're in a reset. And we need to make hay as long as we possibly can.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. In a good way, I think also, like, with you talked about excellence earlier, and I think I heard you, maybe it was at Grace Agenda, you gave that talk about the passages from Ephesians, where you build with straw, you build with you build with gold. That's like, it's pretty easy to everybody decry transgenderism. Like, that's your product. Like, we're not woke. We're not this.
Yeah, we're not.
It's like, cool. Yeah. Well, that's gone now. Great. We're happy that that's gone. But, like, what are you good at? This direction, where can you push it? Especially even, like, with, ironically, maybe the timing in the cosmic timeline is with the rise of AI. A lot of that stuff is just it's easier to just do it now in a good way. In a good way, like everybody should be able to you can just make an image, you can just just edit content, you can just quickly produce. So
just like in a Terry Pratchett novel, you just pick up the little imp in the box and you make
yeah.
Yeah. We got the imp. Yeah. And that is very true. And it is interesting to me that in marketing, in doing marketing for New St. Andrews, for example, I had a conversation with the board via my brother-in-law, the president, like, okay, here's where I am as a marketer. It's super easy to market a safe haven, like in the hellscape out there, but that's not what you want to be. It's not your vision statement. I can go get you a bunch of students, we can get you a bunch of applications if we're pitching a safe haven, but that's actually contra the vision that's on the books. So what do you want? Like how do you want to direct me in terms of the kinds of advertising you want? Because safe haven sells right now, but is off-brand, is not the mission. And he was very clear, and he sent it up to the board. They were very clear, like, no, that's not what we want. We are not looking for safe haven. We're looking for a Shackleton ad. We're looking for we're looking for aggressive, join this Viking band kind of advertising. We don't want the safe haven. But even doing that, you're sailing across the grain of what a lot of families and parents are thinking, how they can't help but look at the madness, and they ought to look at the madness and think, am I going to send my kid here? If so, why? Or here,
some non-woke school. Easy decision.
Here's what it's not.
Sure.
And so I can send them there.
Right.
And so that was a very conscious decision made by the administration and the board at NSA to not do the easy marketing, not just to like pick the low fruit,
right,
but to actually try to like stay on task and what they're trying to do. And that's even more true now. So now it's like, if we do need to train leaders and you do need to train builders, and people are going to go affect culture truly, like go shape it, leave their mark on it, then how do you pitch that vision in this moment?
Yeah, you can't say we're not woke. Okay, well that's gone.
Yeah, that got thrown out. We won.
We won. Yeah,
we won.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yeah, like so. But did we though? It's in terms of there was an old ad, like Swords and Shovels ad, about like the tiny seeds and building, trying to build a cathedral, but very Nehemiah style. That still holds true. It's like we're trying to build something and fortify that thing that will produce dangerous people, so that going woke will be much harder to do in the future.
Right.
But even that, we can't define ourselves. It's like, don't do that again. We're trying to just contra that.
Right.
And that's the case in industry. That's the case in big, corporations, where you have people who are building parallel economy stuff. And it's actually a little bit like Jim Crow, like post-segregation, where you have segregated businesses, and then when they say, hey, segregation's gone,
it's all gone,
all of the African-American businesses are destroyed.
Yes.
The white businesses aren't. They've been the thing that's been held away from you, so they can all go, there.
Sure.
And so that's interesting. They take all the business, and the Black economy collapses. And there is risk of that now with conservative businesses as well, that we're holding the line and they're standing up against this. And then everybody's like, hey, DEI is dead everywhere forever. I'm like, really though? So segregation ended. There is no more racism. It's gone.
Glad we figured that out.
Right? Yeah. Okay. But I think the same dynamics are in play now. And so what Angel's doing, what Angel Studios, they're investing in, what we're trying to build, like I just feel more frothy than ever.
Yeah, it's like durable stuff.
Yeah, please. Like we got it. And also, most importantly, I want to make stuff that goes toe to toe with anything out there.
Yep.
So it's not, hey, come here and we're going to lever the marketing because it's not woke, because you have loyalty to us as Christians, so you can overlook how crappy the content is.
Right.
We can't do that. We just really can't do that. We have to become better at it than they are, and there's no reason for us not to be able to.
Yeah.
So Riot the Dance, the nature series right now, Lunatic Farmer. I love that doc. Like I really, really love that doc a lot because I love the life this guy's led, and the story it tells and what he's trying to do, and then it ties in completely to everything that's going on around us right now. Where how do you?
He literally got tapped, right? By
So he's most likely to be advising USDA.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see, but he's been fighting the fight, and his family's been fighting the fight since the '60s, building a completely different way to relate to the land and farm, and it's remarkable. Like, it's truly remarkable to watch this positive mindset, this inspiring mindset that is focused and has a North Star and a vision that's completely regardless of what's going on around them.
Sure.
It's about how he relates to God, and because of how he relates to God, how he relates to his land and what he's trying to accomplish, and how much he enriched it, like how much his land has been able to do and become. And his stories are ridiculous, but so is his life. Mm-hmm. So he actually got, and when I first heard of him, I was not fond of him at all. And the clips I saw of him and the way he was being used by the Enviro lobby, he was getting kind of steered. Mm. And I don't think he got steered as much as he was getting just snippeted and used.
Sure.
Other people were getting steered. But one of the things that he was loving about doing this doc was he felt everybody had always cherry picked him. Nobody wanted to tell
the whole story.
The whole story.
Yeah, sure.
And look at all of it. So it's a really inspiring thing, but it's an inspiring thing for all of us right now about what we're going to do, where we are. And if we do that, how much better off we are going to be when that pendulum tries to come back at us. Oh, but it really will. I hope it doesn't, but it will. Another couple of generations.
Yeah.
It'll be coming at us. So
where can people go to find the stuff that you're working on?
You could sign up ndwilson.com, sign up for a newsletter. I'm not really newslettery very much, but occasionally I'll let people know what's going on.
Sure.
Following Canon is a great way. Canon Press, Canon Plus. Angel as well. I'm doing a fair amount with them. Twitter, I'm Andy Wilson Mutters. You'll hear me talk about basketball and coaching high school kids in track. But every now and then there'll be the things that matter also.
Sure.
Awesome. Sprinkled in there, sprinkles on the donut. But when I feel compelled to engage on Twitter, it's almost always something about human beings that I'm trying to help achieve things. So
docs aside, are you, in terms of books, any things you have coming out here soon?
Yeah, this year, Death by Living and Notes from the Untitled World actually were very recently reissued, which is pretty awesome.
I did see the covers. They look amazing.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're really, really great. And that's preparatory to completing a third volume, which is underway. It's a slow grow, but it's happening.
Coming out 2050?
Yeah, 49. But just in time for the pendulum to come back. But it's actually because of Ashtown. So Ashtown Burials has been a long saga and a long wait.
Sure.
I actually had very early brushes with cancel culture. I think that cancel culture showed up in children's entertainment first. I think that was one of the first places they got into and are trying to push things. So Ashtown was a casualty of those wars, those early wars.
The fourth book, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I now have the rights back from Random House, which is exciting. And that series is going to be being reissued, and I'm completing it now. Like that's an active thing. So the Ashtown Burial series, I'm very excited about having 2025 be the year of Ashtown. That thing happens. Hopefully 26, the third nonfiction. And then there's a bunch of shows and other things that are all kind of simmering around, docs and narrative stuff that hopefully will be hitting the ground.
As they say, we are so back.
Right?
Their rights back.
But actually, the thing that's interesting is
back.
So what was achieved with Sound of Freedom? It's like, okay, that was achieved in this negative space where people are attacking, and it's this expose. And they did something pretty phenomenal with it. And so we are working with that team, with the producer and that director, on a film right now that I'm pretty excited about, hopefully in production end of this year or early next, but we'll see. So there's just a lot going, and a lot of these things were already lining up, and it feels like we all got to the starting line, and then the gun went, and we're not trying to figure out what to do. We already had figured out what we really wanted to do, and then chains have fallen off. It's like, okay, we had to just go. And that's very, very excited.
Hmm.
So hopefully the next few years will be incredibly eventful.
Let's go.
Good stuff.
All right, Nate. Thanks
Fellas.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the New Founding Podcast. New Founding has become a rallying point for founders and investors who are taking serious bets in the face of a stagnant business culture. Our venture fund backs founders building dynamic companies, powered by American ideals and a positive national vision. These are the kinds of founders that embody the optimism and competence of the people who come on this podcast. If you're interested in investing in our fund, check out newfounding.com/venture fund and follow the link to apply.